Hey Geeks, what's going on? My name is Brandon. Welcome back to the Geek XP. This is my twin brother Kyle.
Hey everybody.
Who you guys have seen in a couple other videos. And today we're talking about Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, or at least a particular element of it.
Yeah, so we just wanted to open up this video first and foremost to say that we, in broad strokes, really love this movie. We think it's, I'll speak for myself. We have similar opinions on this movie. It was an amazing magical thrill ride to go into this movie. There was a lot of familiar beats, but they were different, so it felt like there was a lot of new innovations, a lot of excellent risk-taking on Rian Johnson's part as the director. It really felt like a bold new chapter for Star Wars. Moving forward, if they continue to do work like this, I'm so excited for more and more and more Star Wars.
Absolutely. Critically, the movie's doing very well. However, audience members seem to be quite split on it. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's at, what, 63%?
It's somewhere around 63, and the critic reviews are around 93.
Right.
And people in general, more than even The Force Awakens, which came out and everyone was like, it's great! And then later were like...
Until it became hip to say it wasn't.
Right, and I think maybe people are just
That's
trying
a different video.
They're trying to beat it to the punch by being like, it's bad right now! It's like, well, have you seen it yet? I'm gonna see it on Sunday! It's like, well, you haven't seen it! And even some people who have seen it are either saying they're underwhelmed, or they don't like certain parts of it, or they think it's just they think it's worse than the sequels or the prequels. And not that I'm a firm believer that it's artistic subjectivity, especially with movies. Star Wars by itself certainly isn't for everyone. There are certainly Star Wars movies that I enjoy that other people don't, and that's fine. But we've heard a lot of consistent issues and complaints about this movie that we just think come from a misunderstanding of maybe the role in the film and like certain beats within the movie that it serves.
And that people might have misunderstood or missed the point of certain things that are classic mainstays of Star Wars and not appreciate the innovations for what they are and thinking that they're ruining the thing that they like. So we're going to be talking about briefly some criticisms that people have given the movie that we feel are, for the most part, ungrounded. Parts that we liked about the movie, and then we each have parts of the movie that people have been complaining about that we in particular think deserve special attention. This episode will be filled with spoilers, so if you haven't seen The Last Jedi, we are going to go into it. We're going to talk about characters, events, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch it. If you have seen it, go watch it again, and then come back. So without any further ado, let's jump into some of the common complaints we've seen online.
Why people trashing on The Last Jedi are wrong. Clickbait title. I think a general thing that people are complaining about that I've been seeing is The Last Jedi is too different and they're doing things that I don't like that are new. And I find that a lot of the people who are making this complaint also 2 years ago complained that The Force Awakens was a ripoff of A New Hope.
Right. Which is a whole other video by itself.
A flawed issue anyway.
Yeah.
But I find that this is just like, in terms of critique, is just an invalid argument. I think the new changes they've made, I don't know what people can really say. Like, so some of the new things that we see in this movie are new ways that the Force works, and that's really, I think, the biggest thing that people are griping about.
Yeah, I think so. I think people are using the Force in ways that we haven't seen before, which I find exciting because the way that the Force feels and the way it's described by adepts of the Force and masters of the Force in the movie, it paints it in a much broader spectrum than the ways of just mind-tricking people and lifting objects, which the movie makes a joke
within its meta-narrative.
Within the meta-narrative, which is something that directors and writers are very aware of. In Luke Skywalker's line, when he asks Rey, what is the Force? What does it do? What does the Force do? What did the Jedi use it for? And she says, you can mess with people's minds and lift rocks. And Luke is just like, everything you said there is wrong. And I was just like, yes! Because the Force, the way it's described is, it is the energy that binds life together. It puts the universe together. And by extension, like, that has unlimited applicability for, combat, which is what we mostly see it because these are action movies. But beyond that, there are potentially unlimited uses for the Force. And so Leia is shot in this beautiful moment where we get to see Kylo's conflict within himself in a way that he had resolved to kill his father. And we saw that in the last movie. and in a moment he knows his mother is there, and they sort of call back in an homage to Episode 5, where you have that Force connection and you do that fade cut rather than a sharp hard cut between Leia and Kylo. We're in the same framing, and he chooses not to shoot the command bridge for the Resistance's flagship. But someone else does, and Leia gets blown out into space. And we all assume she's dead. Our hearts are broken.
I was devastated.
You're a mess next to me. And still alive, dying in space, uses the Force to fly. I mean, it's not really flight because there's no gravity.
She flies like fucking Superman.
It was amazing.
Moving.
It was super cool. And then the other big one is at the end of the movie, Luke Skywalker appears to face off against the to face off against the First Order, to the Resistance of their New Hope.
Well done.
I'm a monster.
I'm sure you're proud of
And
yourself.
it is revealed at the end of this fight that Luke is projecting an image of himself. This like 9th level D&D spell, like illusion spell, astral projection of himself to give them time, which is nothing that we've seen before.
Oh, it blew my fucking mind.
But
they even established that other people can do stuff like that. Snoke does a very similar thing by connecting Rey and Kylo,
which was another really cool Force power. And like they're all like within the realm of possibility, I felt, as the Force, but people are so mad that, you know, they were doing things that they felt like aren't within like the universe. Like they're breaking the rules of the Force. It's like, we don't know what the rules of the Force are. They sort of, the writers and directors sort of poke fun at the concept that the Force is only used for the Jedi mind trick and for lifting objects, because it's so much more than that. So I think that when people get upset about that, I think it's due to a conflict of expectations. You know, it's nice to feel like you know a lot about something, but this movie, in more ways than just the Force, and maybe we'll touch on that, played against my expectations so much, where I was constantly surprised. Like, I would go into moments expecting certain things to happen because it was a Star Wars movie, and being surprised at every turn. And I think if they had gone with the traditional stuff, and people were just like, yeah, it was like what I wanted out of a Star Wars movie, then critically, you know, and just like looking at it as a film, it was just like, this is a successful but bland Star Wars movie. It does nothing innovative, but The Last Jedi innovates the franchise in almost every aspect, while still hitting the familiar beats that we like.
And not even just with new Force powers, but with new technology. They change up the formula of what a Star Wars movie typically has, with things like characters making the plan to destroy the tracker that's on the cruiser by boarding the ship and getting the master code breaker. And that plan ultimately fails. Like, Poe is trying so hard to be a hero and to come out and trick the Empire and get them away in a blaze of glory, but it just doesn't work. And sometimes it doesn't work. Another big complaint broadly is people are somehow complaining that the characters are making bad decisions or being like making mistakes. And I think especially in a movie that needs to have a second act where the characters,
we look at the world through the lens of a D&D game.
So the characters are making bad choices or making mistakes, like Rey believing she can turn Kylo, Poe thinking that he can save this last cruiser through some ditched effort, trusting DJ the code breaker, and then just like not having it pan out. And that's a good way to have a unsuccessful conflict resolution for your characters so that they can learn. A major new theme in this movie that Yoda teaches Luke is your greatest teacher can be failure. And so now our characters know so much. They've learned leaps and bounds than what they knew before.
Not to say that like characters in Star Wars haven't failed before, made dumb decisions. The prequels are full of bad decisions, but the difference with the prequels, I find, is that characters make decisions that are dumb, but also don't make sense for the characters based on what we've been shown and told about the characters, but also just like the world itself. Like, they make these bad decisions and they don't make sense for the character, but they're done only to further the plot to get to the end goal of aligning the end of Episode 3 to the world state at the beginning of Episode 4. But we don't know what the world and the universe is going to be like after this upcoming trilogy. So all of these mistakes, they felt plausible for these characters in their mindset. Rey becomes beholden to the concept that she can turn Kylo.
And she has beautiful... Also, on a related side note, her chemistry with Adam Driver, when those scenes where they're connected, was amazing.
And it built organically.
It built very organically.
Like, her failures to Luke definitely gave her a connection with Kylo, so that while I was sort of, I will say I was sort of surprised. Like, this isn't to say the movie is perfect. I do have some small concerns with it, but that's any movie. But I was surprised when they ended up teaming up the way they did it.
Oh.
It was a visual spectacle, and I was shocked and awed, but I was surprised. However, the build to that was well done. And
I surprised you a second time because when I was watching it, I was like, "What does this mean? Is he even gonna go? Is he gonna say hi to his mom? Is he gonna join the resistance? What does that mean? Who are they gonna fight?"
Right.
And then he ends up being like, "And now this will be my universe." And I'm like, "Oh, this is perfect. This is so good."
Yeah, but I guess my original point being that she is beholden to the concept that she can turn Kylo.
Right.
Because she lives in the Star Wars universe. She knows it just about as well as, I think, a general fan of Star Wars, because she knows legends about the Jedi and the Force. She has been regaled with tales about the Rebel Alliance, defeating the Empire to a certain extent. So she has heard the story of how Luke turned Vader in those final moments in the war against the Empire. So she believes that if she basically repeats that formula, and the scene with her and Kylo in the elevator is, I thought it was actually too close to the scene with Vader and Luke in the elevator going up.
I actually audibly laughed because I was like, she's literally saying line for line what Luke told to Vader.
She's doing a LARP.
Yeah.
She's doing an episode 6 LARP, and I thought that was kind of goofy. But these characters are making decisions that I feel are grounded in the characters that we've been shown.
Yeah, Poe makes tons of mistakes in this movie, but they all, I believe that Poe would do that. That seems totally plausible. And I was rooting for him to win. I wanted him to be a hero and do this amazing bust of, haha, we took your tracker down because I'm so smart and you guys are just being dumb. And then it didn't work out.
I'm actually on the opposite end. I wanted him to fail, because if he didn't, what we would have gotten was the man in his sort of just I am so confident, you are weak and dithering, and I've proved you wrong through by doing this act of aggression. I've proven that I was right all along.
Narratively, you're right.
And that, because otherwise, because another thing we like about this movie is that all of our characters, while they've grown in episode 7, all of our characters ended in a different place than they began, which means everyone got good character development arcs within the film, and Poe's was learning leadership.
I guess what I meant to say was, when I caught up in the movie, because these are good guys, and it wasn't just Poe's character arc where he was relatively safe on the cruiser, but Finn and Rose were on the ship. I was rooting for them because I was caught up, and I was yeah, get him! You're gonna win the day. Narratively, it functions far more powerfully for him to fail and learn the value of a different type of leadership,
which he employs in the climax of the film.
Right, which is awesome.
Yeah,
something else that people have been talking about, a small thing. They think that there was too much humor, and another thing, I think it's just people are upset that things didn't happen. What the things that they wanted to happen, or things that they've been debating about for 2 years, didn't happen, or simply things like Snoke, things like Rey's parentage. People are debating back and forth. It's so important to find out who Rey's parents are, and is she a Skywalker? Is she a Kenobi? Is she Palpatine? Something? Is she? Who is she? And find out that she's simply the parents. Her parents were just nobodies from Jakku, and she's built up this weird fantasy in her head that her parents left her and were coming back, and she's part of something greater. I think that was a nice change of form, and for people to be well, that's stupid. Who is she supposed to be? She doesn't have to be anything.
Heroes can start not every hero has to be the descendant of some other hero. The new hero who comes from nothing, I think is a story we all like. King Arthur is a story that persists hundreds of years after the fact, because he was a commoner who becomes the most legendary king in Western mythology. And so the concept that Rey isn't related to a previous character, I think is great. Flipping those expectations on their head is a great way to revitalize this franchise, which has been ultimately predictable in so many of its iterations.
And I think that can be said again with Snoke, because I also think that the general feeling of people that they want to know who people are is this bizarre, mutated, stupid thing that came out of the prequels, where George Lucas over-explained everything and we all hated it, but now we're asking for it. But so many things weren't explained. When you see the Emperor in Episode 5 for the first time, everyone was who's the Emperor? What's the big deal with this? Who is this person? You won't find out until episode 6, and he's basically just the same thing.
Yeah.
They don't explain. There's like so many things they just don't talk about, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the prequels are like, well, let me tell you the life story of every single character. And so now everyone kind of expects that, even though it's not actually what I think people want.
Yeah. Because it's not fun to watch.
Because all we need to really know about Snoke, and I think because the Emperor ended up being such a big part of the prequels after the original trilogy, is when you see a character that is reminiscent of the Emperor,
right.
You think this guy's going to be like the Emperor, there's some big thing, he's somehow connected to Anakin, like he's got all these weird scars, he's got to be important.
Right.
And he could still become important. There's some cool legacy stuff with Star Wars, with Palpatine having clones that degenerate really quickly. Wouldn't it be crazy if Kylo thinks he's defeated Snoke, and he comes back in the next movie being like, that was a dick move.
Yeah.
I think
or like, you have passed the final test by taking me down, you have become a true Sith Lord.
If this was going to be like 4 or 5 movies, I'd say there's a higher likelihood of that. With only one more movie to wrap all this shit up, I highly doubt that's a thing.
And I mean, there's also room for like Rey's, maybe it's a mulligan, and that's not her true parentage, but like something like a fake memory that Kylo and she discovered. I kind of want them to keep it as is. Thought Kylo was an interesting, deep villain, in that he had multiple layers to his character and was going through his own development and arcs alongside our heroes.
Kind of like Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. You've got a protagonist and I don't know why I did the voice. You have an antagonist and a protagonist both growing and learning and dealing with their own conflicts, but they are at odds.
Right, and I'm still not unconvinced that the redemption story isn't there for Kylo. I think that thematically, I think it would be appropriate is if he is redeemed in that moment of redemption, ends up dying, fulfilling his desire to be Darth Vader.
Right. Ironically,
that would, and I think that would be a good way to be Star Wars, because Star Wars is very much intrinsically tied to like the Greek tragic concept of destiny.
And something that's really scary, and I was thinking about it the other day, is like, I think Kylo inevitably will die.
Yeah.
And when he does, he's the last Skywalker.
Right, but I guess my the point I wanted to make was that Snoke's death surprised me. I was kind of disappointed because I felt that the characters in the movie hyped up Snoke. I wasn't as much caught up in the fervor of the fan base of trying to decide like who he was and like what his deal was, but like Han, Leia, Poe, like they all talk about Snoke and like what Luke, they talk about like Snoke had gotten to him first, like Snoke had already like messed with him, like the characters know about this person. Like he has impacted them like at some point a personal level.
And he was terrifying.
And he was really
his force
cool.
powers were, I didn't even think he had force powers, and then he like slams Hux down and just like is like, you're an idiot. And I was like, he does have force powers and they're very good.
Well, that and like he did cool stuff with the force that seemed like obvious, like
he did like a basketball rebound lightning. He was like,
which was really cool.
That was awesome.
But the point is that we got to see Kylo sort of show off like this is what a Skywalker can do. Skywalkers get hyped up a lot, but we don't actually see them do a lot of cool stuff until this movie, really.
Yeah.
We see Leia do something great, Luke is amazing, and we see Kylo not also like be an amazing Skywalker pilot, which
that was so
was
cool.
Super cool. But we also see him like deftly deceive and destroy Snoke.
And then he fights like a fucking badass.
We get to see the crossguard be useful. It's like everyone's gonna be like, what's that crossguard for? And
for this exact moment
where like if he didn't have that crossguard, those other kind of things would have like stabbed him. But we see him like deceive Snoke. Like Snoke is seeing through the Force and he does see what's coming, but he has mistranslated it. And there could have been a moment where Snoke saw through that like deception. Kylo, I think, in terms of what people like from a traditional Star Wars villain, is that they are this dominating presence. And I think Kylo is becoming more and more. And I think we'll probably see a time gap between 8 and 9, in which at the end of it, hopefully, I think because in this movie he was much more controlled. His anger was this more Vader-y, seething, broiling under the surface that would get let out.
With a few key moments that broke that.
Right, which was Luke. Luke broke it, and he became sort of the petulant child that we've seen a lot in.
But don't we all kind of? I think a good counterpoint to anybody who like, because I think we talked briefly about that, but you didn't really particularly like that. But I think, I mean, maybe it doesn't function great as a villain, but I think realistically, like if you look at it critically, don't we all sort of revert to the way we were? Even when you meet people that you knew, but when you meet old teachers, that relationship immediately returns.
Absolutely.
And if he has all this frustration and like anger, then you have that moment where Luke's like, I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sure you are. Yeah. And it's just like, dude, calm down.
And
like,
I will have killed the last Jedi.
Just bring it down like eight notches.
While I was sort of like, I kind of want to know more about Snoke, I'm happy to let it go to see Kylo, who I'm more interested in. You know, at the end of the day, I'm more interested in Kylo than I am in Snoke. So seeing him become Supreme Leader and inherit the mantle of the big bad Force user will be great, and I think it will. I'd be interested to see how he evolves in this next.
Well, I think it also is a good, again, challenging expectations for what you expect from a Star Wars movie. Is like I've thought about alternate, like especially like a Star Wars tabletop, alternate versions of the story.
Yeah.
Where young Anakin, when he turns to Vader, does kill the Emperor. Outright. And he takes control. And like, what would that be like? Yeah. And now we're going to see what that would have been like.
You go from like the evil sorcerer king to like the dominating like warrior king.
Yeah.
Like, warlord.
And I'm very excited to see where that goes. And I think a small time jump, which is normal, which is, has been done every
5
time.
and 6 did it.
5 and 6 did it.
2 and 3.
4 and 5 did it. 2 and 3 did it. 1 and 2. Every single Star Wars movie from the main saga has had a time jump, with the exception of between 7 and 8. But we can get into specific things that we feel are key complaints or issues that people have with the movie that really, when we hear them, we feel it begs explanation and some further delving into the purpose that they have in the movie, and why I think they're actually some of the greatest strengths of this film. Yeah. So I know you're burning.
Yeah, Finn has gone off with our new character Rose,
who is just gosh darn the most adorable character in Star Wars.
As soon as Kelly Marie Tran shows up as Rose, she's gold. Like as soon as she shows up, I was ready to go, because they did a good job of sort of like making us sympathize with her with that at the very beginning of the movie, which was also spectacle-wise
so intense,
amazing.
My heart was exploding.
It was just like, did you like Rogue One? Here's a little bit of Rogue One for you. And we see this courageous woman, give every last inch of herself
and almost fail. I thought that remote was gone.
Yeah,
and then she catches it. I was like,
almost fail to achieve the objective of the Resistance to destroy that dreadnought. And so when we see the other half of that talisman that Rose holds, as far as audience members goes, you're sold.
Yeah. And so, at least it was for us. I guess the point of this is that we should probably open with this. The biggest complaint that we hear a lot of people say is, I didn't particularly like Rose, and people think that the Canto Bight sequence on Cantonica is either slow or boring or needless. Yeah, so doesn't really have any relevance.
So Rose and Finn go off to Canto Bight.
Yep.
Which is
this really cool casino
which is a cool change of scenery. That it's like sort of like the cantina, but very different, kind of like more posh.
Well, I love that because, and Rian Johnson has mentioned, like, this is his scum and villainy, but these are the high class scum and villainy.
But still scum and villainy. Like, even almost, I would say, worse scum and villainy.
I mean, yeah, from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view, which is actually something that, like,
a bigger theme that I love in this.
But so in general, people who say they don't like Rose and they don't like that sequence, you're just objectively wrong. I'm sorry, because a lot of people.
Also, a lot of them are dudes. Like, a lot of the time when I'm talking to people about this movie, dudes will be like, I didn't really like Rose, and I thought she was boring, just sort of weird romantic interest for Finn. They sort of just like nailed in there. And then women are like, I love Rose.
Right.
Which already makes me think there's something that you guys are missing.
Right. So Rose's character is the embodiment of what the Resistance and the Rebellion, which are common things like throughout,
And now we can start calling the Resistance the Rebellion.
Right, because they're a rebellion now.
Because now that the First Order is taking control, they are officially a rebellion.
So she truly believes in the cause of the Resistance. And the entire sequence on Canto Bight shows the grandeur, the opulence, the display that the wealthy have from the benefit of the First Order and, by extension, I would say, the Empire. They're essentially the Empire at this point. But that's at the cost of the little guy. We see those little kids. We see these beautiful racing animals. I don't remember.
The Fathiers.
So the Fathiers are these gorgeous animals that they race, but they beat the hell out of them. Really pretty creatures.
There's also just like tons of indentured
there's tons of indentured servants who were locals on the planet when they made this big casino thing. And they basically are indentured servants because these people just have a buttload of money from selling arms to the First Order and actually also the Resistance. But Finn is totally taken with this place. Mm-hmm. Like, after being a stormtrooper for so long, he's been on the run ever since. He thinks this place is amazing. It's gorgeous, and Rose hates it. And she explains why that, like, on the planet that she and her sister were from, when the Empire comes in, when the First Order comes in, and the wealthy aristocrats who benefit from giving the money.
War profiteering.
War profiteering.
Like, people who do war profiteering are objectively assholes.
And that a little guy suffers. Mm-hmm. And that she would put, and I like the line, I would put my fist through this entire giant, beautiful town. That, like, it doesn't, the cost for this is so high. And that's why she fights for the resistance. And so this entire sequence and her resolve is, in a certain part, to show Finn, who is still at a crossroads. And so we have this sequence where they're on this mission. It's very important to find this master code breaker. And Finn is at this crossroads where he still isn't convinced, but he sees this mission as the surest way to help ensure Rey's safety when she comes back from finding Luke. Right. So they're on this mission and they get captured. They have ultimately failed until they meet this other code breaker who represents the other path that Finn can take. He intentionally stays on the outside. He's just like, stay away from they're all part of the machine. It's better to stay free and away from it. So we have two embodiments of Finn's path. During this course of events, they come across these small kids who help take care of the Fafnirs. And the Fafnirs are these gorgeous animals. Really cool design. Which also this movie does a great job of showing us a lot of really cool alien animal species. And the kids are super nervous. And Rose is just like, we're with the resistance. And the inspiration that she's able to get from these kids from doing that, and by inspiring these kids who show up in at the end of the movie, which is really important, but I don't want to get too bogged down in that, is amazing. It's like, this is what the resistance and what these small guy characters rising against the Empire, which is at its core a lot of the thematic roots of what Star Wars originally was trying to get at, is here. And that so then Rose and Finn, with the help of these kids, break out all the Fafnirs to make an escape. Their escape is via these giant animals.
These weird fox dog horses.
Which were really cool. And so we have this sequence. It's, visually really exciting. Maybe went on for a little bit too long, but I liked watching it. It was a cool sort of
After they burst through enough holes, I'm like, how many times are we going to
break through a wall? But anyway, so they have this epic escape. They trash this casino, which was really satisfying.
Yeah.
And they get to this escape. They get past the walls. They're being escaped by security. And they almost fall off this cliff. And Finn's like, we're done. We're captured. But at least it was worth it. And then
we got to break their shiny stuff.
Yeah, and then Rose takes the saddle, which is sort of just a huge metaphorical. Yeah. It's very symbolic. She takes off the saddle and lets him go and says, now it was worth it. And that to me was this is the point. This is the point of the rebellion, the resistance, that whole fighting for the little guy, even if you lose. It's Rocky fucking Balboa. Even if you get your ass kicked. But if you saved somebody, if you put a little bit of light in the darkness that the Empire, the First Order, the Sith...
The dark side.
The dark side, which is embodied in these different organizations and individuals. Even if you saved a herd of Fafnirs at the cost of yourself, it's worth it.
And she really nails it home near the end of the movie. She saves him, and she said a line that to me made my heart explode in my chest with joy, because it was such a perfect, in so few words, perfect exemplification of what the rebellion in the originals, the resistance in this, and generally the Jedi Order and the light side in general stands for. We're not going to win this war by destroying what we hate, but by protecting what we love. And I was like, this is perfect. This is you fucking nailed it. And so many people are dismissing that line. Right. It's stupid. I'm but it's amazing.
They see it and she kisses Finn. It's oh, she's in love with him. She's just the love interest. It's okay, well, first off, maybe she does. Why not? They just went through an adventure together. Emotions are high.
She probably has a crush on him.
Yeah, he's handsome.
Have you seen pictures of him from the premiere? He is a damn handsome young man.
John Boyega is
He is so charismatic. I would have kissed him if I was in that shit.
But also, she saves him. She says this thing, she may not be talking about him. When it was it's just
she probably thinks she's gonna die. She's probably never kissed a dude before.
Yeah, she says what she loves, but it's also just because she still sees him. I think even after his flaws are revealed, as a hero of the resistance, I think his humanity has been shown.
Yeah,
and he's not quite as mythic as when she first meets him, which was an adorable sequence.
And that's a theme throughout this whole movie: is that your heroes are never as mythic as you expect.
Right, it's a big part of that. For us as an audience member, and for the characters in the movie.
Well, and also Star Wars is cheesy.
Yeah,
even if she does love him, let there be cheese.
Yeah.
For the love of God.
Why not? So I think for those of you who didn't like her, I say reevaluate why she's in the movie, reevaluate the purpose of that sequence, and to inspire and give Finn resolve in the faction, the cause that he has been thrown in with, that he actually gets to choose it because of its purpose, which was shown to him through Rose and the deeds that they did. Like, because there is a purpose. It's not just needless filler character stuff. And I think if you think that, you need to really look at the movie, not just take things at face value and go off your first assumption. Because if this movie proves anything, is that if you assume something because you've watched a Star Wars movie before, you're wrong.
Right.
That, like, this galaxy, this franchise, this fiction is so much more multifaceted than
we've given it credit. And that's, again, another huge theme in this movie. Like, Finn sees DJ, and he's like, well, at least you're helping us fight the bad guys. And DJ, for being a traitorous asshole, is like, dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
There are no bad guys. Like, yeah, there were in the originals, but then so many amazing pieces of work for Star Wars, whether it be in like the Clone Wars or Rebels or books or video games, show that the universe is not always as black and white as light side and dark
Which is something that I think the franchise has evolved with a little bit. You know, the original formula for Star Wars is relatively simplistic. We have our good guys and bad guys. Light side, dark side. Red lightsaber, blue lightsaber.
And the good guys defeat evil, which is a very satisfying thing. It's something that made me feel really good when I watched this movie.
Yeah.
Because we live in an objectively questionable time where, you know, it feels like the little guy really is always being pushed aside and people aren't listening, and there's just like an overwhelming presence of frustration and like conflict.
If anything, the sequence with Rose and Finn is like more prevalent now than probably.
Yeah, I think Star Wars, for like, you know, for every time that Star Wars has come out since the original, now in 1977 are the most relevant times for there to be an impactful Star Wars movie.
Another thing that we really like about this movie is that I would say, bar none, is the most visually artistic.
It's certainly the most artistically inspired film I've seen. Just period. I've seen in a long time. There were just so many shots that I was like, that is a gorgeous shot. Like, I think
the big one is the hyperspace
like
kamikaze.
Yeah, and it was just, and that was also a beautiful bit of sound design where like you could drop a pin and everyone in that theater audibly gasped.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my god. Like,
it was gorgeous.
Not only was it an epic like play of the game, but it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And there were so many moments like that where like I just would have wanted to pause it because like, can I have this as a screensaver, please? Because it was beautiful. Luke staring down the giant new AT-AT gorilla walkers.
Yeah.
The moment with the Millennium Falcon flying through crystal caves.
Yeah, that was really pretty. Crate itself, that battlefield, which was very reminiscent of the Battle of Hoth, which
old but
feels
new.
much more appropriate at the end of our movie rather than the beginning.
Well, that's why it was different. The stakes are totally different. Like, when you watch in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, you're like, they're gonna get out.
But in terms of the visuals, the idea that there's this like red clay earth beneath a layer of sand created a really cool... Oh yeah, a layer of salt created this really interesting imagery where these like junker ships are like pushing up all the salt, that when it gets cleared away from all this blaster fire, where like all the salt has been cleared away on the entrance to these big blast doors, it looks like blood because it's scorched red earth. It's all like glistening. It looked like the whole thing was covered in blood, and it was just the image was just like it was really cool.
There was so many moments that like absolutely took my breath away.
Yeah, like a lot of the scenery in Luke's planet, the entire like weird force vision that Rey had was just like visually crazy.
Also, that weird dark side hole legitimately scared me.
That like I still get like
I felt very uneasy.
Like the camera sort of like peering over it,
and then she was like gonna fall.
Yeah, it was horrifying. I thought that
scary.
sea serpent thing that you see, I thought that was gonna be some crazy like dark side like force sensitive monster from like Rebels.
That would actually be really cool if it came up and like talked to her.
Yeah, that's what I was
like. Oh man,
that's what I thought was gonna happen. I was really uncomfortable because I have like a fear of like deep sea creatures.
That would have been.
I would have like peed my pants in the theater.
Really scary.
But you would like to sort of like address
that nothing hits me as strong as the Rose thing hit for you, and we talked about a lot of the things. Some things I hear people say, it's like, we still don't know who Rey's parents are. That one you just weren't paying attention. The point is they're nobody.
Right.
Like
they don't matter.
You don't need a name.
Rey's the hero, not them.
Yeah, like Rey's a hero due to her own actions. No, I think this movie is definitely not perfect, but in terms of like as an effective, good movie that is also a great Star Wars movie, I mean, I need to see it again just so I can really look at it, because I was just like on this crazy ride and it ended and I was emotionally drained and I wanted a snack and I wanted some water
and needed a hug.
Like I felt like I had it was completely, it blew me away in a very positive way. I've been reading these bogus articles online.
People think they're smart.
People who work for like Screen Rant or for even IGN. Shame on you, IGN. People writing articles who just didn't pay attention. People who are writing articles complaining about the implications of Yoda's Force Ghost appearing to Luke.
Jesus,
which was the best fucking part of the movie because it made me overwhelmingly emotional.
That was so cool. Also, like, props for making, like, this Force Ghost of Yoda. Instead of going with, like, the prequel Yoda, like, it was Puppet Yoda.
And it was
awesome. Exactly the same as he was in Episode 6. He was adorable and goofy.
But the issue that they brought up, and it has to do with the first point we made about new Force things and how they defy expectations, and that's making people butthurt for some reason. Also, just a blanket statement, I think a lot of people went into The Last Jedi wanting to hate it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they just wanted to not like this movie, which is just a bad way to experience cinema in general.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe it just might be that anti-hype thing, which I get because when people really want me to like something, your inclination is to dislike I will actively dislike it until I experience it for myself. It's very irrational, but it happens. But people complaining that, well, Yoda's Force Ghost showed up. Why is he showing up now? Why didn't he show up when he was having trouble with Ben? Where's Obi-Wan's ghost? Why isn't Anakin's ghost helping out?
Why doesn't Obi-Wan and Yoda show up every time? Like,
why do they just solve all the problems?
Obi-Wan died near the middle of Episode 4. Why doesn't he show up in just every scene and help them out? Because that's not how Force Ghosts work.
No, I mean, to quote Han Solo,
that's not how the Force works.
You know, it's not how the Force works, and it's not how mentors work.
Yeah.
And the whole point, and it's Yoda sent it home with, failure is your greatest master. Yeah. Like, it's not their job.
No. He said, like, to impart what you have learned. And that failure is part of, like, Luke experienced quite a bit of failure. Oh, I would say a good handful. But, like, that was part of it, and if you're mentoring someone and you want them to learn, you don't handhold them as a ghost.
Yeah.
Also,
it's a stupid premise.
I imagine Force ghosts can't, just appear whenever they want.
Yeah. Well, not that you need to watch the Clone Wars before this. You should if you like Star Wars because they're really good. Qui-Gon's ghost appears before Yoda. And it kind of talks about how difficult this shit is, and it's not easy.
And it really usually only happens at places where the Force is very strong.
Yeah.
Like, they can't just appear anywhere. I imagine that the planet Luke's on is very strong, like, in the Force. Like, it's sort of like Dagobah. But the Force is strong there, so Obi-Wan was able to manifest. Like, these Force ghosts can't just show up wherever.
And I think, I guess my biggest gripes with the complaints that people have.
We have gripes about gripes.
Is that they just don't seem thoughtful. Like, they honestly just seem like either one, you just want to hate this movie, or two, you're nitpicking it needlessly for things that you just aren't willing to think about what purpose they serve in the film.
Yeah.
And not everybody analyzes film the same way that we do or other people do when they actually, like, go in to review something. But I think there should be a reevaluation of what a bad movie is because so many people are already calling it a bad movie when it's just not. It's just not a bad movie.
It's well constructed.
Yeah.
The characters go through arcs. We hit good comedic beats that move on to serious beats. We get interesting character development. We get surprises. We feel happy. We feel sad. Like, these characters are believable. They are well acted. Like, I don't remember, like, a bad scene. It was like, there are certain moments, like, I was excited that we got to see more Captain Phasma.
Yeah.
I wish we had seen more because I think she's super cool. I hope she comes back as a cyborg for whatever reason.
I think it'd be cool if she came back, and they totally could because falling in a fiction never means you're dead.
Because we also didn't see if she had died in 7. They could have easily said that she died on the explosion of Starkiller.
Exactly.
Because they were going to put her in a trash compactor.
And there are some complaints about the movie that I think have some credence. Like, I think a legitimate concern is people think that they underserved Phasma in this movie.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from an expectation of what people want Phasma to be and not what she actually is.
Yeah.
People see this, like, faceless masked
She was a badass
and she fought like a badass.
She got
finally.
Just
like in episode 7,
she was a juggernaut.
Like, because I will say that her treatment in episode 7 is objectively bad.
Yeah.
You build this character up and she just sort of is goofily, cartoonishly captured,
and
manipulated, and thwarted with zero resistance. You never see her do anything effective.
Whereas in this one, we get this awesome fight, which
that's really intense because I
was actually more satisfied with that villain defeat. I mean, Snoke was, I think, intentionally disappointing. Like, to be like, this wasn't what you thought it was going to be. So, but then we got an awesome dish of Finn versus Phasma, which was badass. And I think, objectively, she is still the better fighter, but he surprised her. He caught her off guard.
He had his friends.
Well, he had his friends, but also like she had knocked him into a pit and thought he was gone, and then he sucker punched her.
Yeah.
With the electric baton.
Yeah.
And how cool was it when they were like fighting and there's just like electricity arcing over her armor and she doesn't give a damn.
But I think I think in episode 7 she was very underserved. I think she was far more effective in episode 8, and she's gonna be like Boba Fett. If you actually watch the original Star Wars, Boba Fett doesn't do anything cool. Ever. Not ever.
Once.
He follows the Millennium Falcon and gets there first.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything cool and he dies like a loser. I love Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I think he's woefully underserved in every movie except for Empire.
Most of your OC Star Wars characters for most of our youth were basically Boba Fett clones.
Ironically before that was a thing. But, you know,
That's so true.
But but people wanted her to be this fictitious version of Boba Fett that we've all as a culture created.
She's already surpassed her.
She's already cooler, but like
only in this movie.
Only in this movie, but like if she is actually dead, I'm not going to be butthurt about it because if she's this impossibly amazing fighter, why do they need Kylo? Like, I think she served her purpose.
The Force is
she's a threshold guardian for Finn as a physical embodiment of his past to face and defeat.
And to put his past away.
Yeah, I guess, so to sum up, we think that The Last Jedi was a overwhelmingly successful Star Wars movie and just a really good, well-crafted movie.
I think it is very aware of the narrative, the meta-narrative, the mythological roots of Star Wars, the overarching and underlying themes of Star Wars. It understands the nature of these things before they got played with a lot. Like in terms of the raw elements of things like the Force, the dark side, the rebellion, the core of those things, which was sort of explored after the fact or discussed after the fact and just sort of seen on a surface level in the original films. I think those creating this movie have a very good understanding of what those mean and showed us those on a higher level than we've seen in other Star Wars.
We really love The Last Jedi, and while criticism is totally legitimate and you don't have to like The Last Jedi if you really don't like it, some people may just not jive with you.
Right.
And that's totally okay. But when you're making critiques on something, be thoughtful, because we've heard so many critiques, and we're not even critiques, just raw criticisms of this film that we feel
unfounded
and just not thoughtful. So we just wanted to respond with why we think certain key things that people have been griping about maybe require further discussion.
I think a lot of the concerns with the movie or people's criticisms have to do with it defying their expectations, and I guess our sort of message to everyone is that's okay.
I think it's really is a good thing.
I think it's integral for this franchise to persist, to evolve, and to change with new audiences. I think Disney and the producers and J.J. Abrams were smart to sort of play it safe with The Force Awakens, use a very similar formula with different elements within that formula. Whereas in Episode 8, they changed a lot. They've taken a lot of risks. They changed the nature of a lot of things and shown us different elements of those. But they all feel grounded in the logic of the world of Star Wars. Nothing felt beyond what was possible for things like the Force and the technology and characters.
But we're getting
But thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it so much. Subscribe if you enjoy stuff on the Geek XP, and
we know content's been a little slow recently. Carson, Nate, and Marley have been workhorses, constantly putting out regular content, and we've all moved within the last 5-6 months. I know both of us have been talking about doing more content. We have a new creative project that is sort of in the early stages of production right now that we're really excited to share with you, but it is going to take some time. Right. We do appreciate for so many of you guys still sticking around with the channel, still staying subscribed. We have a small core fan base of people who keep hanging on to live streams, and I can't express enough how much that means, especially to Brandon and myself. and Marley and Carson and Nate, everyone who's part of the Geek XP. So thank you so much for your non-stop support. I promise more content will be coming along. We're all just sort of resettling and sort of reacclimating to new schedules. Yeah. But like Brandon said, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Please like and comment below, subscribe.
Yeah, and you guys have been awarded some Geek XP, and until next time, stay geeky, my friends.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.